poem is about my grandmother, and she had this obsession with Sylvester Stallone, right? Those of you who are in my family, you guys know she was like really into Rambo and Rocky. But when I thought about it, I was like, okay, it makes sense because, you know, Rambo was all about her homeland, you know? So this poem is called Matriarch. She points at the television as if she could translate Rocky, make sense of Rambo. She is camphor blouse grandmother, keeper of jars for flamed cuppings. She knows where men have been, those falling into tarnished landscapes, sinew machine built from fire as if coal were burning their insides. Rocky's arms draw skin drip of diamonds in the meat locker. Rambo is carnage cloaked in her homeland mud. She knows them as one, their howling stare before they yield, the way their eyes turn lunar, rogue as dead stars thrown back to the graveyard in heaven. In the afterwar, there are no more terraces, no more hills, no hand to sweep the hearth, but always there remains a man omitted, and that she knows as well. I think it's really sweet that you're all applauding after every poem, but you can hold it. You can hold it to the end. Okay. This next one has to do with the Secret War, and it's told from the. This poem is an address to a soldier of the war, and it explores the idea of being left behind by the Americans. It's called Dear Soldier of this Secret War, Laos, 1975. You once felt the American hand that blew its breath to drive the fire. Now they've ended the war. The American has gone home. Your Hmong village is a graveyard. Do you think of your missing wife, how the Pathet dragged her naked, screaming and bleeding by her long black hair deep into forest shadows? Or your son's head in the rice pounder's shell crumbled? And your brother, the youngest who followed you into combat, it was scalpel that day they captured you both. They sliced off and boiled his tongue, forced it down your throat. Do you think of the American returning to the coffee cup? New linens in a warm bed, pulling into the driveway. Sorry about your mountains, they say. Here is the last of the ammunition, a few cases of grenades. Do you picture him reading the morning paper, turning on the nightly news? Maybe you clench your rifle closer, sling your elegies to your back, hold them as a newborn baby. You will wait for hours in ragged fatigues with others abandoned, swarming the dirt runway, shoving toward the locked aircraft door among the scattered shoes, shirts, blouses, suitcases thrown out. What grief song erupts when you see the last American plane take off, distant above Longcheng? How loud do you beg in your gut, pleading to some invented god or ancestor or politician, all of our thousands who died on your side, why won't you authorize another plane? I think, when I'm thinking about what's been going on in the world right now with the sort of the global crisis that we're seeing with refugees and Syria, and then today with Afghanistan too, it's alarming to me. And so I read this poem and I think about that. And this is a poem called Transmigration. And in the Hmong culture, if a Hmong person still practices shamanism, it's very common for you to call your spirit before you leave a place. So this is what that poem explores. It's the idea of leaving a country and making sure that you call your spirit to go with you. And so I think about that in the context of refugees everywhere today. It's called Transmigration. Spirit, when I flee this jungle, you must too. I will take our silver bars, necklace dowry, and the kettle forged from metal scraps just after the last monsoon. Among the foliage, we must be ready to see the half-decayed. You must not run off no matter how much flesh you smell, nor should you wander to chase an old mate. Spirit, we are in this with each other the way the night geese in migration need the stars. When I make the crossing, you must not be taken no matter what the current gives. When we reach the camp, there will be thousands like us. If I make it onto the plain, you must follow me to the roads and waiting pastures of America. We will not ride the water today on the shoulders of buffalo as we used to many years ago, nor will we forage for the sweetest mangoes. I am refugee, you are too. Cry but do not weep. We walk out the door. Okay. All right, you guys hanging in there okay? Yeah? Okay, so, you know, we live living in the valley, we all deal with the summer heat, right? But how many of you like to stay up really late and go out and look at the stars in the summer? You know, I do. Or just any time of the year, right? Yeah, I do. I love that. And you know, there's that meteor shower that happens at the end of summer, the Perseid shower, and you go out there and you're really patient and you're just watching it. If you can just pay attention, you'll catch several of them. So this is what this poem is about, and it is called Heart Swathing in Late Summer. In the penumbra of an oak under sculpted moonlight, we pile the last waking hours on our faces, breathe the wilderness of dry heat, waiting for fall ventilations. It feels later than it is, and the air is already mouthing the date for tomorrow. At least now, our eyes can fall into the craters of a waterproof reflection, and we stop for a moment to fill ourselves with the kind of light that can only be found in the dark. What is night if not for it being a repetition of unlit squares glued jointly, plastered against the thought of midday? What is not seeing but to echolocate a name? It's how I find your chin when I can't sense the meaning of your hands. Weeks ago, it was astral rebounds, shiny hinges. We harvested the fertile Perseids posed recumbent in the back of a flatbed, tallying the mineral opulence reserved for those who wait. Not ever so many in return. Now this moon in its entirety has never looked so much like a distant circular kite set ablaze, doused by the kind of burning a man feels when he hears the humming of rain against a woman's bare neck. Okay, you can talk. This is a poem, you know, when I think about why did I start writing and why did I choose poetry, you know, I've been doing a lot of interviews lately, like media interviews, and so I get asked that question quite a bit. And so I feel like in doing all those interviews, I'm able to kind of formulate an answer that makes sense for me now. And I really think that, you know, having a history, coming from a history where I didn't have a very strong literary culture, or coming from a history where we didn't have a written system, a formal writing system until the 1950s, it really has implications for me as a writer. You know, who am I to think that I can start writing right now in this day and age when all of the ancestors who came before me struggled? And so for me to write in this era as a Hmong American, it really means a lot. And so this is a poem called Original Bones that explores that. Original Bones. I wander the earliest days when I had a written language. before 1952, when missionaries in Laos wrote one for me, before 1959, when a phantom script came to the mother of writing, before 1986, when I drew the letters of Mai Der. I showed up in southern China a few millennia back. Uncooked people led to war. As a child, I once looked up from a farm in Fresno's valley. So much deeper, the engine echoes in my kicking eardrum. Grayer now, my eyelids gnarl into clouds. There was a time the mountain came to surrender, pressed itself down as my page. All right. I'm trying not to choose the poems I always read, you know? That's the thing when you have a book in front of you now. Okay. So I wrote this next poem. Laos is a country that haunts myself as a writer. It haunts my historical memory and haunts the collective memory of many Hmong people. And so, I came to learn too that it's one of the most heavily bombed countries. Well, it is the most heavily bombed country. I think there's a very specific statistic that speaks to that. I can't think of it right now, but it is definitely one of those countries. And last year, Obama had pledged to double the funding to remove the unexploded ordinances in the country. And so I think of that, and I wrote this poem called "I, the Body of Laos and All My UXOs." It's been 40 years of debris turning stale, and submunitions still hunt inside the patina of my mud. I'm stumbling with ankles steeped in my little wrecked chimneys, a foot wedged inside a sandal. The bandage wraps my chest, and I sense the new branches of a cypress within me, waiting to tear open the gauze. Where are the high verandas that once guarded elephants? What ends the deepening numbers, resounding into night? A plane load releases every 8 minutes forever. Left only with cistern walls dismantled in this era of widows, this is no way to be lived, clawed and deveined by steel splinters concealed. The ground knows more than a child will ever. No way to seal the gaps when a smuggled climate spills over my body, taints me with cobwebs spun from overseas. Okay. So Lee pointed out that I moved to New York to pursue my master's degree, and it's definitely a change from Fresno, right? Drastic change. One of the things I couldn't get used to though when I was in New York was the noise. It's just so noisy. How can I sleep? Right? You had cars honking, traffic. You could hear people's conversations outside. But eventually, it just became part of your daily life. It's just to embrace that noise as part of life, right? And so this is a poem called "Ear to the Night." I press my hand to your sleep, then I find your spent head under small whirling tresses, having digested the clatter of car horns, children bustling into sweet shops. This might be the gift of a street, drumming Saturdays in a Monday palm of heart. I've learned that yours is the chorus of breathing, a rhythm forgiving that nuzzles the margin within my nature's cratered sigh. Once I felt the feet of a canyon collapse within you. Then I come to eyes heavy with the tumble of night dew, having collected verdigris off the entrance gate. Never mind the umbrella you lost on the subway tracks. The head is an iron jar filled with many swiveling hours, All day I listened, a city carved from the hollows of a wire-woven shell. Okay, and I think I'm going to do just like 2 more poems here. Yeah. So my family still practices shamanism, and so we still do a lot of the traditional spiritual rituals of feeding one's ancestors. And so the book Afterland, you know, when I try to think about what it means or what I was trying to do with it, I was really trying to think about the afterland of the refugee, right? Where does this refugee end up? What country does the refugee, what new environment does the refugee find him or herself in? But I was also thinking about the afterland of that post-war country too, of Laos, the afterland of Laos, and what, you know, we don't think about it in that terms. Like we just kind of think about the new country. But for me, I was also thinking about the afterland of Laos. And then, in the most obvious sense, I was thinking about the afterland of the spirit. And I felt like there was some strange connection happening there. I thought, you know, in the afterland, I wonder, there must not be those borders and walls that we keep talking about in this life. You know, there must be a way for us to be able to get through the realms that we need to get through in order to get back to our ancestors. And so I explored a lot of the poems in the latter section are an exploration of that. And you might say, you know, if you kind of dig into it, you might get that feeling. But this is a poem about a ritual in which is something that we still do in my family, which is feeding one's ancestors. It's called the spirit meal. It's been 100 years since their last morsel. No honey on palate. They hunt the living in dreams. Now the dead come to dine in my kitchen. Paper plates line the floor, each offering rice and boiled meat from the hen mother butchered in the garage. Spoons have been dispersed. The ground table is set. As though sounding a dinner bell in the hereafter, Father chants, "Come eat." As though they enter in procession to sit at their chosen plate. Father pours a shot of rice wine. Incense fills the air. I picture an opened cupboard in the sky where the feeding hand reaches down to find their waiting mouths. They trudge as the famished turtle whose flaccid head is ready to break. Grains and poultry turn molasses on their tongues, dripping as flame syrup off the chin until their filled liquid faces burn away. All right, so, gosh, I wish I had poems to amp it up a bit, but I feel like this is what you're gonna get from me, okay? Sorry. All right, so my last poem, and then I'd love to have a chance to do a Q&A if folks have questions or want to know anything. So this is a poem, I guess I don't know how I would describe it in terms of like myself, but it is, I feel like it's a meditation about war and having been through war. And there's a refrain and that will repeat that is in Hmong. And for those of you who don't speak Hmong, the refrain basically means we are Hmong, we will always be Hmong. Okay. Light from a burning citadel. Once this highland was our birthplace. Once we were children of kings. Now I am a Siamese rosewood on fire. I am a skin of sagging curtain. I am a bone of bullet hole. I am locked in the ash oven of a forest. Beya, and we will be. The sky sleeps quilted in a militia of stars. Someone has folded gold and silver spirit money into 1,000 tiny boats. Beya Hmong, and we will be. I am hungry as the beggar who cracked open a coconut to find the heart of a wild gour. Hmong, and we will be. The tree is more ancient than its homeland, shedding its annual citrine as hourglass dripping honey. Beijing Itzi Hmong. I dig and dig for no more roots to dig. I soldier with my severed legs, my fallen ear. I've become the shrill air in a bamboo pipe, the breath of an army of bells. Thank you all so much.